All right, so good morning. My name's Alex Gonzalez. I'm here with Brian Puente. We are the two Adobe evangelists at the U of A. And this workshop is going to be an intro to Web and Dreamweaver. And intro, it might even be a generous term here because we're going to just scrape the surface of the idea of how a website is built and how to do it with Dreamweaver. So what we hope you take away from today is a little inspiration to learn more and an idea of how to use Dreamweaver to pursue that goal. Okay, so here's our mascot of the day, an alpaca. Looks like someone smooched it here. We do have some assets today if you want to follow along toward the end. We're going to use them. It's just a folder of images that have been prepared for a template that we're going to check out. So go ahead and download those if you like, but you don't have to. And let's look at what today's going to be like. In fact, I need to open. Okay, so before we talk about Dreamweaver, we're going to talk about HTML and CSS for a chunk of time. Has anybody used either or familiar with making a website at all? And it's totally cool if the answer is no. You know what? MySpace totally counts because that's about the level of page that we are going to to be able to make today, because it takes a lot more time to get further than that. Oh, awesome. So Denise has even made a website, slideprojector.com. I'll check that out toward the end during our question time since we're recording. Very cool. So some of you, Denise might even know more because I'm no expert on this topic. We're just here to take a look, and I have some experience, but that's not my forte. So this is kind of just a fair warning that working with Dreamweaver, some of the other Adobe applications make it feel like they've removed a barrier to and made them easier to use. Dreamweaver does that a little bit, but you still, well, it does it a lot as far as efficiency goes, but you still need to have a foundational knowledge in HTML and CSS, and hopefully eventually in some programming languages like Java or Python or anything like that. So just a quick, sorry if this is review for some of you, but HTML is what we call, well, it's short for hypertext markup language. And it's the language that creates the layout of our websites and our web applications. It's kind of the blueprint. And what HTML does is it uses a series of tags, which you can see a couple there, to create that layout. And what happens is our web browsers, for instance, Chrome, reads that HTML and turns it into a website. So the HTML, if we use kind of an analogy here, it's kind of the bones of a website. And its structure kind of mimics a human. It's got like a header, a body, you can add a footer. That doesn't have arms and fingers, but you know, it's a pretty good analogy for us. So if we were to inspect this page, we can see the HTML that makes up this web page. And this web page is made up of a lot more than HTML, but the starting structure is made with hypertext markup language, which I don't know how many people will ever ask you what that is an abbreviation for. And well, let's go ahead, and what I like to recommend is there's a ton of amazing resources online for learning HTML and for referencing HTML, because building a website a lot of people don't just do it off the top of their head. I mean, there's some really great retention, people that have great retention, But what's important is to know how to find your documents and your references and remind yourself if it was supposed to be text color, or was it font style, or what was it, text style, or what was it? So you can find websites. One of my favorites is W3 Schools, because it has these interactive try it yourselves where you'll see it happen. You can try it out before. And it has everything broken down on the left-hand side. You can see HTML basics, elements, attributes. Then it talks about doing CSS, but we're not going to quite jump into that. But let's talk about how this all comes together. So we have an HTML document that is wrapped with an HTML tag. And then we have the head. And the head actually describes something that is not rendered on the page, but the title that you see in the window, and other important things about the website that you might put in for search engine optimization. And then you have the body itself, which is where the website is. So if we go try yourself, we can see that the body has an H1, which is a heading style of type. And then in this case, 1 is the biggest and 6 is the smallest. It's kind of like the most important one. 1 is going to be bigger. And this says right here, my first heading. And then it says my first paragraph inside a paragraph tag. And if I add a second paragraph tag, another paragraph. This will be on a separate block or line. And if I run this, now there's another paragraph. And generally, when we first start making websites, we kind of view them as this top-down thing. Each thing is its own block of code. And that's every website has this basic structure. So that's kind of a teeny tiny crash course on HTML. I didn't talk a lot about different elements or anything like that because it's not quite what we want to worry about today. We just want to see how to do it in Dreamweaver. Are there any questions, in general questions about HTML? And it's okay if they're not. So then we have what we call CSS, which stands for cascading style sheets. And the keyword there is style. And this is how we make our websites visually appealing and interesting, and in many cases, interactive and just kind of cool, for lack of a better word. So HTML, if that's the bones, CSS is the skin and the clothes and the piercings and anything that you add to make it unique. So it's the language we use to style an HTML document. It describes how HTML elements should be displayed. So generally speaking, most websites will have a separate file, a .css file, that instructs the web browser to style the HTML. So you target parts of your HTML with the CSS. And it can also be done what's called inline in the document. But in general, it's best practice to do it as its own separate file, because that single CSS file can style a whole web page that will be made up of many HTML files. So again, if we go back to W3 Schools, you'll see a CSS example. You'll see all these informative articles about how to do CSS selectors. That's what I mean by saying I want to make the H1, the heading, green. And you can go even further. CSS can do a lot of things. In fact, we'll look at an example site in a second. But let's go to this try it yourself. And in this case, because it's a web-based application, we're seeing it done inside the HTML document, which is fine. It gets placed inside this style tag in the case of the HTML document. And basically, you can say for any body, I want the background color to be light blue. That means that anytime the body element shows up in this website, it'll have a blue background. And all H1s will be white and centered. And all paragraphs will be the font Verdana and 20 pixels. And this is a very sweeping style, but you can actually go and do specific ones. In fact, let's get wild here. So you can target many ways, but one of the most popular ways is to do it with a class or an ID. We're just going to use classes today. So if I take the word example and I put what's called a span tag around it, class is highlight. And what spans do is they let you kind of single out a piece without adding a block of code. So I have this class called highlight. If we look at the way CSS works, is it has your selector, it has a pair of curly brackets, and it has the attribute that you're changing. So let's go down here and let's add my selector. So this is a class, and classes in CSS are read as having a period in front. So highlight, I hope this works. A pair of curly brackets, some space in between. Spaces and entering in your code don't translate to your rendered project, so they're just for readability. And I'm going to do color. You can see it has a colon, and then we choose the color. And for colors, you can do hex codes, or you can just do built-in colors. So let's just do red. And then it separates them by a semicolon. So if I render this again, if I run, I've made that part red. And I can do more. I can do font family impact. And I don't know if this is right. Text shadow. So I can give it a shadow that is 2 pixels big and goes out 2 pixels and is the color black. I think that's right. So now we should see it change to impact and get a shadow. Ooh. So this is like a very simple demo, but you can see how using these CSS styles, these attributes, you can start to make a website more than just a row of elements like we saw here. Questions about CSS so far? And what's really nice with Dreamweaver is it has an editor panel that has those listed out for you, and you can go and adjust them instead of remembering and typing them in. So as long as you understand what they do, Dreamweaver does a lot of work for you. Okay, and let's look at an example. We've probably been to amazing website can be built entirely. This should say amazing websites can be built entirely with CSS, this typo. But if we just click on this one, Apple is well known for making these really engaging websites that as you scroll through, elements appear and disappear and are animated and videos play. And almost all of this is done through CSS. So just because we won't take it very far today, it doesn't mean that it can't go somewhere amazing. I don't know that I could do this without spending a lot of time researching and referencing, but it's pretty great. All right. That's our little itty bitty tiny crash course on HTML and CSS, because we're going to be looking at those two things. Yeah, right, Denise, isn't it crazy? If you're ever bored, just Google like amazing CSS websites or top CSS, and there's I forget what the website's called, but it gives awards for great website design, and you can see things that are done, and they'll tell you how much, if it's all CSS or if there's anything else. And the great thing about CSS is that it's super low on demand for computational power. So CSS websites load really fast, and regardless of device. All right, let's talk about Dreamweaver. So what is Dreamweaver? Dreamweaver is a web development application. It's got some unique features, and there's some things that make it stand out from some of the kind of free options that are out there, like VS Code. But if you've used something like that before, the coding space is going to look pretty familiar. So it has a modern user interface with a lot of functionality for helping you code faster and cleaner. And then it has this unique visual design element that you can edit on the actual preview of the site instead of in the code. So how's it unique? It's got that built-in live view. It has these quick docs, because I was just showing you W3 schools where it's like, oh, how do I do a text shadow? What are the 3 parts of the attribute? You know, how does an anchor tag work? You can quickly bring that up in the code, and I'll show you in a second. It also has a CSS Quick Edit, which, as what I was saying, is a CSS file is usually a separate standalone file that styles your whole website, all of the HTML files that you might have associated with it. And Quick Edit lets you find a part that is being styled and open it as a little preview inside your code and make changes there, instead of opening up the separate CSS file and going to search that selector. Great. And it also has built-in site templates, these things called inserts and snippets, which are all just tools that will help you code faster, help you learn, and just kind of help you just have your resources all in one space instead of jump around. So that's what Dreamweaver is. And what we're going to do is check out the workspace. And then we're going to talk about how you start a project. We're going to make a simple, like Denise said, kind of MySpace level page, kind of how we were seeing demoed in W3 schools. And then we'll work from a template. And I imagine by then it'll be time for questions and kind of just letting it sink in. And Brian, if you can hit us with the resource link one more time. We have, I think, a couple of people joined. Thank you for joining. So if you've just got here, all you missed was a little introduction to HTML and CSS. And there's only one assets file, it's images that we're going to work with. Okay, so the first time you open up Dreamweaver, it's going to ask you a question. It's going to look something like this. Are you going to be as a developer or standard? Go ahead and choose standard. If you didn't the first time, you can change it whenever you want, but developer is going to give you that kind of only back-end look where you see the code. So use the standard workspace. All right, and I think that's all I'm going to do on the Spark page. Okay, so once you've chosen your standard workspace, it'll take you to this quick start menu, which if you've used Adobe products before, it should be pretty familiar. I really like these quick start menus that they have because they give you common files, they give you templates. You can also go to the Learn tab and dive into how to do things. Here you go, how to style with CSS, how to do layout with CSS. So CSS can also help you make columns and rows and design on the grid or tiles. So you can take it a lot further than what we did today. Okay, so before we start making a file, what we need to do is define a website, because another unique thing about Dreamweaver is that you can plug in your server and host information and actually do everything from Dreamweaver to access your online files, upload new ones, and publish again. We won't get that far today, but it's really cool that you can do that. So the first thing you have to do is define a site, because it's got that kind of holistic, the whole start to finish ability. So I'm going to go to the site menu, and I'm going to go new site. And with websites, they're structured with the root folder, the folder that it lives in, and that's usually where your HTML files will live. And inside that folder will be other folders for assets. In this case, our assets will be images. So we want to make sure we don't just put it in our documents folder or on our desktop. We want to put it inside a folder. So I'm going to browse for a folder. Oh, you guys can't see what I'm doing because I'm on my lower screen. Sorry. Here we go. Okay. Browse. And I'll just go on my desktop. But again, if I were to choose this, it would just be mixed in with my messy desktop. So I'm going to make a new folder and name it demo site. And again, this is where all of the files with this one website will live. So if you're making multiple websites, you go back to site and make a new one and switch over to that site. Then I'll click choose. And I'll name the site here as well, demo site, because I made a folder, but I didn't actually name this site within the Dreamweaver workspace. If you're on GitHub, you can actually tie in your sign in and do your you can push and all that good stuff, but we're not going to go there today either. So let's save. So now I am on a site. Nothing really feels like happened other than I've defined that I'm working on a website called demo site. So let's go back to talking about the workspace. In Quick Start, we can see our Quick Start files. We're only going to do HTML today. We're not even going to make a CSS document. Dreamweaver will do it for us. On the right-hand side, you can see we have our file browser, which is showing us the folder that we just saved this site into. So let's go ahead and take a moment. We're not going to do this for a bit, but let's take a moment and go and get that images folder that I sent you and put it inside our demo site folder, because these are images that we're going to use on our website. Your images, all your website assets should live inside that folder, because then when you host it, you upload that whole folder. And web pages are not as kind as like InDesign and Photoshop and Illustrator and XD, where you can drag and drop and it finds them. And they're located by paths, and the paths have to make sense and be consistent. Okay, anyway, I'm putting images inside demo site. There's like 6 things, some social icons, a cute puppy, and another cute puppy. It's the same one twice. Okay, this eventually refreshes when we save something in there, and we'll see it. Thanks for joining, Patricia. Yeah, I'm glad you could make it for a little bit. Okay, and let's continue exploring the workspace. We have the files panel where you can look at your assets, and you'll see your documents start to show up here as you make them. We have CC libraries, which is your Creative Cloud files, if you have any, common Adobe thing. We have insert, which is elements of a website that you can drag and drop into your visual designer or the coding space. And we have the CSS designer, which is the style editor. Down here, we have what's called the DOM, which is the document object model. You can think of it as the diagram of your website layout. Like if you think about, yeah, just think of like a wireframe. You have assets, so you can see my images showed up here. And then you have snippets, which are kind of like inserts, but they are more custom. They can actually just be blocks of code, not actual elements. And you can make your own as well, which is really nice. If you find yourself writing the same line of code over and over again, You can save it as a snippet and give it a keyword, and you can type the keyword, press tab, and it'll populate the whole line of code. It's pretty great. On the left-hand side, we have some, open a which documents are open. You can turn on an inspector and a few other things. There's a few things like format your code so that in case you've been coding and everything's kind of on weird lines, you can highlight it and get it to format it to your, well, to a little cleaner view. Okay, so we're going to dive into the workspace and making a simple HTML website kind of simultaneously. It's nice to do them at the same time. You can follow along for this part if you like, but you don't need to if you don't want to. The final stage where we talk about templates, I would encourage you to join in. So I clicked on HTML document, and now my workspace is live. You can see my coding area here, and it pre-populated my HTML document with the usual stuff. And then up here is my live view, which there's nothing here right now. So there's nothing to render. And again, now if I go to inserts and everything, I can actually select them. Before I start doing anything, I should save this HTML file. So I'm going to go File, Save. And it's going to go inside my demo site folder. Usually, if you're making your homepage, well, always, that's going to be called your index. It doesn't really matter today what we name it, but I'm going to go ahead and name it index. Make sure you don't delete your file format afterwards, because if this doesn't say .html, Dreamweaver won't recognize it anymore, and it'll just be an unknown asset. So we'll save. Nothing has changed, I just saved it. So let's go ahead and make a site with a header, an image, a paragraph, a list, and a little bit of CSS styling. So we get an idea of how you navigate all of that. We'll set our expectations low on how amazing this looks. So like I was saying, you can go into your body and you can hard code things as you like. I wrote this H1 title. And it will show it to you above as a web page. A web browser will render it. But if you like, you can also use your inserts, and you can go and say, I want a H1 heading, and it's going to go ahead and drop it in there. And then it says, this is the content for your H1 layout tag. You can edit it up here, although I prefer to edit text and things like that inside the coding workspace, because if I do it up here, it adds coded spaces, which just makes your code look messy. So if I want to name this, we're making a page for my puppy, Penny, the Pekingese. All right, we started to make a website. And also I should go ahead and give it a title, because right now it'll say untitled document in the little tab on my web browser. Say Penny the Peak up here. All right, so let's say I want to have a title, and then I want to have an image underneath it. Again, I can hard code image source equals and bring this in, and it invites me to browse for my file here. But if maybe you're newer to this, you can instead go to your inserts and drag an image. You'll see these little lines show up, and that'll depend on where it's going to end up in the code. So it's going underneath my title inside the body. And what it does is it opens up your browse window and shows you your folder. So we're going to use this picture of my blurry dog. I should have a better image, but that's okay. So if I click open, it's going to go ahead and plop it into my website as big as the image is, and just put it in as that next block of code. And that's fine. So then I can go, and when you get a large image in there, it can be a little hard to manage, but let's go ahead and add a paragraph. And you can also go and put it in the code. So I know that I want it under my image tag, so I'm going to go ahead and put it here. And you can see this is the content for your layout p tag. And maybe, I don't know what I'm going to type there, but I can go ahead and fill it in with some filler text called lorem ipsum. And I think there's a little snippet here for that. There it is. So if I click, double click, it goes ahead and fills it with some filler text. The way paragraph tags work is they follow a single line as long as they can, and then they wrap down when they hit the edge of the container. So if I want two separate paragraphs on separate lines, you just do a second paragraph tag. And I could copy and paste this if I wanted to. Okay, so I have a live preview here, but I can also see what it looks like in a website, which is another fun part of the workspace. On the bottom right, you'll see this little browser and phone icon. Dreamweaver doesn't like my 3-screen setup, so the window doesn't appear, but you could click here and choose your browser, or you can go File, Real-Time Preview, and I'm going to use Chrome. That's kind of the standard, the most common web browser. So it asks you to save first because it will render from the file. And if it's not saved, it won't show you your latest version. Okay, there's my amazing page. If I scroll it down, the text moves around, the image stays the same size. So this is a live preview as I make changes. Say I wanted to say Penny, the incredible Pekingese. Save. Now it says Penny, the incredible Pekingese. And let's go ahead and add an ordered list, because the list is a really nice example of why you need to understand a little bit about HTML, because it doesn't pre-populate the list for you. It just puts the tags in there for you. So if we go here, I want to have a list of Penny's favorite things. So I can scroll down and I can say, okay, H2, because that's smaller than H1. And we're going to name it Penny's favorite things. And again, I could type it up here if I wanted to. I can grab it and move it to other parts of the page if I wanted the list to be first. You can do a lot with the visual editor as well, but it's not necessarily the fastest or best way to do things. Okay, and I also want to take a moment to just show you that right now my document, my code is kind of hard to read. So I could highlight it and I could choose format and apply formatting. And what that did was at least clean it up a little bit. But what you generally want to do is tab things out by how they are nested within each other. So more like this. Yeah, that's a little easier. And I like spaces in between. And again, spaces entering down and all that, they don't mean anything. If I enter down on this part of the paragraph, it doesn't change how it renders. So when you're formatting down here, you're just doing it for readability. All right, so if we want to add an ordered list and we don't know the code for it, we can go to our snippets. And there's two kinds of lists. Ordered lists will be numbered, and unordered lists will be bulleted. And as you learn more about CSS, you'll learn that you can also override built-in styling like that and have no bullets. Most of the navigation menus that you see in websites are unordered lists without bullets. So if I click unordered list, it just puts UL there, which the name makes sense. And then what we do is inside this UL tag, we put each list item. So if I put list item here, it adds LI. And I can say one of Penny's favorite things is donuts. And if we look at the live preview, donuts. And let's say I want to add a second list item, you have to be careful and thoughtful, because if I click list item again, it's going to put it inside of my first list item. So if we were to, you can see that it put those two tags here, which is not what we want. We want a separate list item. So it's make sure you click outside of it, maybe even click where you want it to live, and then click list item. She also loves hot dogs. And then I'll enter down and say that I'm getting an error in my code. And you can see it's because this tag is not closed. It's actually two open tags. So let's close that. Oh, much better. So that's what we mean about kind of a modern coding space where it lets you know. And let's say I'm not sure how list items work. I can right click and I can pull up Quick Docs, and it'll define the HTML list item element is used to represent an item in a list and must be contained in a parent element, OL or UL. Oh, good, we did that. They're usually displayed in these ways. So you can then read more and it'll take you to a deeper dive in the list items, or you can close it. So that's really useful if something isn't happening how you expected it to, or if you don't exactly remember how it works. So, okay, one more list item. And another thing she loves is Judah, her big brother, our son. So if we look, we have some filler text. Oops. We have some filler text. We have a H2, Penny's favorite things. We have a list, an image, and a heading. Let's go ahead and save and preview again, just so we can see what's happening. And there she is. You can see the page title that I put, Penny the Peak. And now let's go ahead and style this. Not very incredibly, but we'll center some text. We'll make the image a little bit responsive. We'll make it smaller and adjust to the window size. And we'll choose a background color and maybe do some other things as an introduction to playing with CSS in Dreamweaver. Are there any questions so far? Because I did talk pretty straight through that. Okay. If there are, please chime in at any point. Don't wait for me to ask if you have a question. So let's start adding selectors to our HTML document. That way it can talk to a CSS document. And the reason I can just start with a selector is because when I do that in Dreamweaver, it's going to ask me if I want to style in the document or make a new file for it. So let's go ahead and click on Penny the Pekingese, the incredible Pekingese. We'll hit this hamburger menu. No, we won't, sorry. We'll hit this plus, and that's saying it's asking for a class or an ID. So IDs are generally only used once to target a very specific part. Class is used to target something that you'll use more than once. Maybe you have a common heading style, or maybe all of your text is going to get this. And then you can also target entire tags. So you can say, I'm going to target all H1 to be impact 30 points black. Okay, but we're just going to use a class and we're going to name it title. And what you name things in your selectors, in your code, in your variables, you have to be very, okay, good to hear, Denise. You have to be very thoughtful about how you tag, select, and name things, because you want your code to be something that someone else can open up and be able to work with. If you end up working somewhere, they'll generally have a style guide where they'll tell you how they name things, if they use dashes or camel caps, but also do yourself a favor and give things names that make sense. So I might even do title 8th one, right? So this is, but we'll just name it title today. So when I put that selector in there, it does classes by default. If anybody's wondering, if you want it to be an ID, you need to put a hashtag in front of it. Or a pound symbol if you're more old school. So then you hit enter and it's saying, okay, what is our style source going to be? Are we going to do it in the page itself, or are we going to do it in a new CSS file? Because I don't have one at all yet. And in this case, I want a new CSS file, and it'll open up my file browser asking me where I want to save it. I'll hit browse and make sure it's going inside the same page as this HTML file. And we'll just name it style.css. Again, that format at the end is really, really important. So if you don't put .css, it might not do it for you and it won't know what to do with your file. When I hit save, it gives me this window and it says, are you going to link it or are you going to import it? Import is usually used for CSS files that are hosted online and you put a link to that. Link is used with the direct path to it, saying it lives in the same folder. So we're going to keep it linked. What I want you to notice in my documents, it's going to add a link tag to this CSS file. So I'll click OK. And here in the head, because that's where we put things like that, they don't get rendered on the page, it says link. What kind is it? It's a style.css, or no, what is the path? And what is a relationship and what type is it? That's not that important to know or understand, but there it is for you. All right, so now this title has a class of .title. And if we leave our inserts and go over to CSS Designer, this is where we can go and style our website. And you can see it automatically added my selector of .title. So I can click that and all of these properties will show up. And I can just scroll through all of them if I want, or I can use these little shortcuts. So let's go to text and let's make the text a different color. Let's make it like a blue. So I'll hit enter now. And then I can change the font family if I want. Let's go ahead and do Consolas. Pretty neat. I can center the text if I want. And centering works differently on different tags. So we're going to center the image as well, but there's not going to be it's not going to be a center justify like you're used to with a word processor or anything like that. And again, I can do more stuff. I can do my shadow. You can blur things, which is pretty neat. And what people do with things like this is they add blur or they position shifts with some sort of animation that moves it from one to the other, and it's pretty fun. Okay, we're not going to add a shadow today or any transformations, but there's a lot you can do. Maybe we'll make it. Now we'll keep it that size. Okay, and let's go ahead and do just like last time. Let's add different styling to one of the words to see how. So I'm going to put the word incredible in a span tag. And it automatically creates the closing tag, which is sometimes helpful, sometimes not. So right now the word incredible is inside its own tag. You can see span showed up right there. So I can add an ID or class to that. So I would add, let's say I do this throughout my document. So I'm going to use a class and I would name it title highlight. It's a little highlight in the title, right? And it's going to go to my style.css. So I'll hit enter again. And now if you look in my CSS designer, I have title. And if I click, I also have title highlight. And what's happening, they're cascading, which means they apply to everything that is nested inside of a tag. So H1 has the class title, and inside that is span. It's going to get any styling from this title class. But whatever styling I give the span will overwrite the title. Hopefully that makes sense. And let's go ahead and play with this. Let's say the font family. Sorry, I stepped on her. She's down here on my floor and I stepped on her. Let's go to title and let's choose the font family of impact. And let's give it a background color. I wonder what happens if I do that. Oh, this is going to be ugly. Well, let's do it anyway. Like a highlight color. And okay, that's not too bad. And you can see it's got a background color now, and we can keep going. We can get crazy, but let's not go too crazy. I'll confuse myself. All right, Penny, the Incredible Pekingese. If we save and preview in Chrome, we can see what it looks like on a web browser. So what I saved was the HTML file, but I didn't save the CSS file, which I'll actually open that up and show you guys as well. Okay, Penny, the Incredible Pekingese, with a little new styling to it. This is centered, nothing else has gotten anything. So here's a CSS file, and you can see it has added title, title highlight, and this is all the coding that it's been doing for us, which is pretty nice. Let's go ahead and do a quick edit thing just for fun, because I did mention that. If I right click on the class title and I do quick edit, it's going to show me that line of code from CSS. And I could say, oh, okay, the color, that's all fine, but I actually also want, oh, I don't remember if it's font size. So and see if I type, it gives me text. Is there a text size or is it font size? Looks like it's font size. So font size, and it gives me my colon. And then I click here and I could do, I don't know, 72 pixels. And then I hit semicolon to close that. If I'm done with my quick edit, I just close that out. And if we go to the style sheet, you can see I added that right here. So that's a pretty neat little trick. Let's save. And all right, let's get this image a little smaller and centered. Does that feel okay? This is going to get a little repetitive, and then we'll see a couple different things in the CSS designer. Okay, so we will click on the image and we'll click plus, and we will name it hero image with a capital I, camel caps. And then I'll hit enter again. I want it to add it to my style sheet. You can see now down here it says hero image with no attributes. So let's go to CSS designer, choose hero image. And what I want it to do is I want it to be smaller. So I'm going to choose a %, and I want it to be 75% of my container. So that's not 75% of the original image size, that's 75% of where it lives. And then I'm going to make the height auto so that it doesn't stretch it like that. So if I save, let's save the style as well. Well, I'll just let it do it when we open it. Yes. We will see the image is smaller and it shrinks along with my window because it's set to 75%. Pretty nice. It's still off to the left. Let's go ahead and center it. To center an image, you'll have to do 3 things with CSS. So let's go to hero image. The first thing you do is you set its display instead of inline, you set it to block, like it's its own block of code. And then you set the margin, the left margin to auto and the right margin to auto. And with auto on left and right, it centers it. So again, if we go to our preview, and it's going to ask me to save because I didn't save the CSS file, we'll see it's now previewed, and there she is. I think this is as far as we're going to take this. Let's put a background color, and then let's look at a template as well, because it's already 11:30. All right, so let's target the body. So I'm gonna, if I click, remember clicking on different parts in the visual gives us that different menu. So let's click on the back, and there's body. I could add a class or ID, or I could just target body in my CSS file, a body tag. So let's go ahead and right click quick edit. Let's see if this works. No, let's not do it that way. Well, okay. So what you can do, let me do that again, sorry. If I don't want to make a class because body only, body's always going to have the same no matter where it is, I can click on that part of the code and I can go to CSS Designer, and then I can just click Add Selector, and it will create a selector for whatever line of code I'm on, which in this case is the body tag. If I were to go to the H1 tag and click Add a Selector, it will add .title, which we already have. So let's not do that. Okay, on body, let's just add a background color because, I don't know, a white background is kind of boring. So we'll click background color. And I know I said white was kind of boring, but I'm going to just choose light gray, which I guess is also boring. We'll hit enter. And now I've changed the color of the background, and I might have introduced some readability challenges. So I might need to choose a better font or background. But then I can save again and preview. So save. And there's my kind of MySpace level website. But these are kind of the foundational basics that we should practice and get comfortable with, and then start taking them further when we can do something like this without having to stop and research it. Also, this gray is not good for accessibility. It's really easy to see to disappear. This blue and gray are too close in value. Okay, questions about kind of simple HTML editing in Dreamweaver? Oh, thank you. Thank you very much. All right, let's just look at a template, and then we'll call it a day. Should be pretty good. So if I close this window, it will take me back to my quick start menu, and it will show me I can do starter templates or quick start, but I clicked on starter templates. And if you Google Dreamweaver templates, you'll find that there are a lot of them out there. Some good, some great, some not good at all. And what you need to understand about templates is that they're not really drag and drop. It's not like going on, I don't know, what are those, like Squarespace, like those nice visual online editors, WordPress, anything like that. You need to have your images ready, and you need to be prepared to go and customize and replace the code yourself. That being said, let's go ahead and choose a responsive about page. How can we create a responsive website? That's a really great question. And the first step is something called a media query. It's a CSS attribute. And what media query does is it reads your device's resolution, and you can basically create a set of attributes for if the media query comes back as a large device, as a medium, as a small, and you'll have to define them. You can say when it's small, change the font size to a percentage and change the image to this and change the display to inline, anything like that. So media queries tend to do a lot of it for you. If you really want to take website building further, you'd probably start to go into frameworks like Bootstrap and things like that. And they actually define that for you, and you just go and copy and paste elements in and customize them. So as you begin to understand how it all pieces together, you'll find that there are a lot of resources that have already done the work for you on purpose. The coding community is very open in sharing, and it's really cool where you say, oh, I want a calendar to pop up when I click this box. You can go and find one on like something called node.js, and you'll just paste the code in there where it's supposed to, as long as you understand how it works. And now you've got a pop-up calendar. So sorry if that's went further than I needed to, but Aaron, the first step is a media query for site responsiveness. Okay, so this website is, they call it responsive as well because it shifts as the screen gets smaller. So let's go ahead and look at this template. We can see it's asking us for 5 images, a profile picture that is 259 pixels by 259 pixels with a round shape and an empty background. So it's going to be a PNG file that I've already prepared for you all. And then 4 little social media icons that we can create hyperlinks to. And if you look at the visual, there's a lot of information there. But if you also look at the code, there's these little sections called comments, which have an exclamation point in front of them and are grayed out. And that means that they're there for the human. They're instructions, comments, clues for a person looking at the code, and they don't do anything to your actual product. So here it says, hey, this line of code is downloading the font so that no matter where the website loads, the font will already exist in case the user doesn't have it on their system. And it's saying, hey, right here, put your profile logo in place of the span, add your anchor links here. And so it kind of clues you through because they want you to use it and do it right. So let's just see how to replace some of these images and how to make a few changes. Let's see where we go. So let's start by replacing this image. You might be tempted to drag an image in again, but what will happen is it will add it to the code and it'll change our formatting and everything. So we actually want to change the path, the href, for where this element is pulling the image. So to do that, we click on it, and we can see down here it's saying it's pulling it from my hard drive, user file, my username, my library, application, Dreamweaver, blah, 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 all the way to the built-in Dreamweaver files. And I'm going to change that path to my folder, my images folder, and the profile picture. So let's click the hamburger, and let's click the folder to browse. The hamburger is the 3 lines, by the way. And I will find that little profile picture. There it is. It's called image 5938 copy. Very good name. You'd probably name it profile image 1 or something so that the assets are easy to read as well. All right, and there she is. She's down here too. Here she is. There we go. Yep, that's you. I'll have her review her page when we're done here. All right, so sorry, I can't help it. She's right here with me. So then let's add our social media icons the same way. We'll hit hamburger, browse, and we'll put Instagram. And what I want you to notice is when you put that there, you also have the option to put a link. So let's go ahead and put a link there as well. Here's a little plug for our Instagram if you're not following us yet. It might be broken. I was trying to get to it earlier. Oh, here it goes. Lightning fast. There we go. Profile. We are Adobe Arizona, if you haven't followed us. So I'll copy this and I'll go back to Dreamweaver. Click on the hamburger. and I'll define a link for it to go to. And if you look at the code, it says image source, the path has changed. And if I put a hyperlink in here, it also gives me what's called a target. So if you want your links to open up in a new tab instead of leave your current website, you can say blank. And then if I hit enter, you can see that now this image tag is wrapped around an anchor tag that takes you to our Instagram. So let's see what that looks like. And it still has that built-in formatting. So this is a CSS style. You can do a hover attribute that says, when I hover, change the opacity to 50% or put a this on top of it. There's a lot of things you can do with hover. So, oh, let's save this file. Save. So index is my home page. This will be an about page, even though the home page is an about page. I'll save. And because we used a template, it actually has its own CSS file. This is all the CSS that it already had built into it. And it already saved it in that folder for us. And in fact, I thought, yeah. So here's that responsiveness, the media query, minimum width, max width. And that's what it's saying, where it gives the different instructions for different medias. So a lot of this you often don't have to do yourself. It will already be coded for you. You just have to utilize it. Okay, file, real-time preview, Google Chrome. Sorry, she's fighting with my trash can. There's her profile picture and a link to Instagram, which for some reason is working really slowly. Oh, there we go. Okay, and it works. Oh, look, we got a follow. We did it. All right, let's add the rest of the social media buttons. Hamburger, folder, and let's add Twitter, and hamburger, folder. Let's add YouTube, the hamburger, folder, and Facebook. We do have a Twitter that I'm not very good at posting on, but let's find that. Here it is. Grab the Twitter link, click on it, click the hamburger again. I'm going to give it a link to our Twitter and tell it to open in a new tab. And let's do it again for YouTube. YouTube channel. You can find our recordings there, but you can also find them on the reference sites. YouTube, hamburger, hyperlink, blank. And this is also how you can say, oh, well, I want Facebook to take me to the homepage for whatever reason. If you had like a homepage button, you could do link, and you could say, take them back to about.html. This will be interesting. Let's see what happens with that. File, save, real-time preview. All right, so Twitter goes to Twitter. YouTube goes to YouTube. Adobe at UA if you want to find us. And Facebook goes to index.html, which is not all plugged in together, which is why it won't actually take us. I was wondering if it would work, but we got to do like a rabbit and stuff. Okay. Now we could go and we could make our edits again. Let's go back to source code here. When I change the title here, I prefer to do it in the code, because if you delete too much, you'll end up deleting the whole tag. So we'll put and what she is. We can just go down to the next line and edit that. Super fluffy puppy. And they've already put our text there. We could probably put her life story there. And if we were to keep going, we could go ahead and, maybe I don't want to put, she has no history here. So I could click this and just delete it. And now my About Me page has become contact information and some more portfolio links. And it wants you to link these if you want to change them. You need to go into the href here because right now it's already got one. And then let's say we want to go ahead and change the background color again. There we go. Well, let's go ahead and go to our CSS designer, and we can see we can target body right here. And let's change the background color to make a light pink. Oh, it's hard to read. Maybe we'll do an even lighter pink. Dreamy. And at this point, you would just keep editing your content to go ahead and build it out and make it what you actually want to do, is spend time customizing. Are there any questions at this point? And actually, I don't think we're going to go any further today because we would have to go, we'd have to get pretty crazy. So I really thank you guys for joining us. So at this point, what we can do is save and continue editing, but we haven't done any hosting, but you could throw this on your server if you wanted to. I wouldn't consider it done yet though. Yeah, so thank you for joining. If you've got questions, please hang out and ask. If you don't, then enjoy 15 minutes of earlier. Awesome. I'm glad this was targeted for people who have never been inside Dreamweaver before. So I'm glad that you could join and check it out. And yep, and Brian's got a link for you guys on responsive design in Dreamweaver. And I should have added that Dreamweaver has a lot of responsive design built in. It's got more than just a CSS media query. So we don't yet. I'm not sure how many, what the demand for something like that is, but it's something that we might explore as far as offering classes for people with experience with Dreamweaver as well. I think Brian and I would have to dive a little deeper into Dreamweaver as well to develop something for that. But it's if there's demand, we'll do it. 100%. Thank you, Charlene, for joining. And I'm going to look at Denise's web page now.